Hi, it's Hans at ahappierman.com. Today's topic is just leave. Like I said, my website is ahappierman.com, and I talk about ways that I've used to become happier than at any time in my life. The last quite a few years now have been the happiest of my life. Much happier than as a child, a teenager, a college guy, a young man, a married man, a father. Just now in my 50s, I've know what makes me very happy, and I'm continually working on those things and refining them and figuring out what other things I'd like to do. So the topic of just leaving is, it has to do with leaving whatever bad situation you're in without agonizing over the effect that your leaving will have on others. Because if you do that, if you over agonize over the leaving's effect on others, you might tend to not do what you need to do for yourself, and you'll notice that the bulk of society is built upon you not leaving and doing things right for you. The bulk of it's built on you doing what's right for other people for their reasons that may or may not have anything good to do with you. For example, in a marriage, the marriage should be good for both you and your wife, right? Not just you, not just her, both. So if it's not good for both, then you leave, right? So even if the one it's not right for is you, so you'll find that women who leave their husbands are celebrated and brought up as a great thing, and it should be. But that the men who leave a marriage it's not thought up as a good thing, right? It's thought up as a bad thing. So you as a man have to get past that, right? You as a man may be in this horrible marriage, and you may be doing things to even sabotage your own marriage worse in hopes that your wife will leave, right? So you try not to get the blame for the leaving. Well, if you think about that, that's probably kind of weak, right? That's kind of weak. If you've determined that the marriage needs to end, you end it. You know, there might be some monetary, financial gain by her leaving, but probably not. Probably not. If you leave your wife and get divorced, and if you've got some significant years into the marriage, and depending on your location, you can be taken to the cleaners and be left with nothing. Kind of how I was, right? But see, the what you accumulate as a married man won't matter if you're not happy, if you can't continue to live in this horrible marriage situation that you got yourself into. So you got to take responsibility and do the leaving yourself. And so I wanted to, so if this kind of rings a bell with you, if you're feeling like something's wrong in your life and you don't know what it is, you might want to check out my book, Leave Your Wife and Become a Happier Man, the 3-step system. It's available on my ahappierman.com website, and I've got a long article describing the book, so you can kind of get a flavor of what it might be in what you might encounter. But basically, I was a verbally abused man. I eventually made my mind right. That's the first part of the book. Got my mind right and I describe all these strategies how I got my mind right kind of screwing up my courage and building up my self-confidence and self-esteem enough to actually go through with the leaving. And the take action was the various things I did to prepare, and then the actual leaving, which was traumatic in itself, and then afterwards the rest: recover, recharge, heal, and grow, which is where I'm at now in this happy time in my life that I am going to continue for the rest of my life, the happiness part. So getting back to the just leaving, you might have to just leave without making much of a preparation at all. See, at some point, if you're in with this person, with this lady, and she's just kind of horrible to you, and you're at the end of your rope, you've got to make the decision quick and get out of there, all right? Just leave. You don't have to make this an elaborate goodbye either. You might just leave and have your lawyer contact her, right? If it's too painful, if you're at the point where the marriage is just kind of a joke, a sham, where you're like these terrible roommates that are constantly sniping at each other, with her doing most of the sniping and you doing most of the scurrying around with your tail between your legs, trying to avoid her wrath, which is probably where you're at. Just leave, right? There's nothing to gain by trying to get her to understand where you're coming from. See, that's what I kind of did for quite a few years. I was trying to explain to her what I needed from her, what minimal things I needed to make my life good, and she refused these simple things. It wasn't much of an ask on my part. It wasn't much. So I thought it should, so I tried to minimize how much I asked for, knowing that she would have a hard time giving me a lot. She'd only be able to give me what she could give, which was what I thought was a very, very minor amount. When you talk about the give and the take, well, that means you give and you take, not just you, the husband, gives and the wife takes, right? That's not a give and take relationship. That's a give and give relationship. But anyway, I wouldn't be afraid just to walk out the door. If I were you, I would just do it and have your lawyer do the talking. See, but this does take a little bit of preparation, right? You walk out the door. What are you gonna do for money? How are you gonna get a hotel room? You got somebody to stay with? That's where I have a few ideas in the book how you might approach this. I wouldn't bother sitting her down and saying, "Hey, I'm asking for a divorce." Why? Why would you do that? Just leave. Just grab the stuff you need to survive for a little while, and then eventually you'll get back whatever the kind of stuff that you wanted from the marriage, the household. You can let the attorney do all that. See, this is the only way to kind of survive a really harsh marriage environment, is to just, when you make the decision, go through with it without with no elaborate goodbying. This isn't going to be like a movie where you sit down with her and you both cry about the leaving, and then both you agree to part as friends, and it's for the best. No, it's not going to be like that. You've decided what's best for you. In her mind, you staying is what's best, and you under her thumb getting verbally chastised every time you turn around, and you're the slave to her whims. That's the way she would like it. But see, that's not good for you. That's only good for her. I would argue that's not good for her either, but in the way this kind of works sometimes with women, is they get so wrapped up in this bossy, domineering, verbally abusiveness to their husband, that they think that this is the model marriage, right? That she's right, that she should make all the decisions, that she should control all the money, even all the money you make, that she should make every decision, that what you want doesn't matter at all. See, in her mind, that's a good thing. But see, for you, the man in the equation, that isn't good. You're going to have a life of living hell where all you do is work all day, probably at a job you don't even really want to be at anymore. You'd like to try something else. And every bit of money you make from that job, you don't spend on anything you want. Right? Everything, all the money goes into the joint account, and all the money from the joint account she removes to do what she would like to do. See, at some point it becomes not a you and her working together. It's you working, and then she does this, right? So you're not going to be happy with that. You're not going to be happy with what little free time you have. You're continually involved with things that she's created, messes that you kind of have to figure out how to undo, and that it's exhausting. So, I would be at work at one job I had, and be listening to the guys with wives, and and they'd come in on Monday, and we'd sit around at lunch and talk, and they'd be describing all the stuff that they've been doing all weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, I didn't do one thing I wanted to do this weekend. Everything I did was something that she kind of demanded that I do. And this continued for Monday upon Monday, and for months and years. And see, if you have a life like that, see, if you never do anything you want to do, how can you call that a good life? Right? How can you call that a good life? Now, certainly, there's going to be, if you're married and with children and in-laws, you're probably going to be, your things that you want to do is going to be light. It won't be that much, and you've agreed to that with the marriage that, you're going to share. That's the natural way of it, that you're going to have to give up quite a bit of the things you like to do. But if you give up everything you like to do, how can you call that a good life? So I would argue with the just leaving, there's really not any sense in explaining yourself, or writing elaborate lists or letters, or going to counseling, or getting therapy, or having family meetings. It makes no sense for you. If you've determined in your mind that you need to leave, you just leave. And that's where your happier man life begins. All for now.